Well, I have a joke, actually. My granddaughter told me a joke. John told me a while ago that when you do a demonstration, you always have to bring some humor in. Well, I don't know any jokes, so I asked my granddaughter, and she had a joke for me. So here's what it is. Why do lobsters never share? Because they're shellfish. It's my granddaughter's. Okay, so anyway, this is the box I'm gonna make today. This is maple. I've got a little ebony insert in it, and it's an in-grain box, which means that the tree grew in this direction. So this is in-grain that you're seeing on the end. You don't have to make in-grain boxes. You can make other boxes. Here's one that's not. This is one that's made from these blanks that are over here. And I don't know if you remember these, if those of you who have been here a couple years, but we used to make tops out of those. And we have all of those left. We don't make those tops anymore when we go to events. And so we're looking for things to do with them. If you want some, take them. Anyway, I made this. I glued 3 of them together, and the tree grew this way, the trees in this direction. So it's not an in-grain box, but it works basically the same way when you make the box. I'm going to do in-grain today, though. And they should always pop when you open the lids. Did you hear it? Okay. They don't always pop, but they do sometimes. Okay, so why do I like to make boxes? Well, I like to make things that are functional and that I have some chance of making them attractive. I don't say they all are, but at least I have a chance of making them attractive. They're fun to turn. They don't take a lot of time. They take some time, but not a lot of time. And you can do a lot with them. For example, I've made some that are like salt shakers. This is just a box with a tight lid. I drilled some holes in the top, and it's a salt shaker. You could do one, say, in a dark wood, and you'd have a pepper shaker. You can use them for jewelry, paper clips, whatever. Here's another salt shaker I made. I made it like a little snowman. This one has threads. It's a good idea to put threads on if you really don't want the lid to come off accidentally. And when you're shaking salt, you probably don't want the lid to come off accidentally. Anyway, there's a lot you can do with boxes. You can make coin banks. There's just a whole variety of things. So I also like to make small boxes. I like this size or so. And one of the reasons is because if you give a box away, if you give somebody something, a turning, if you make a big turning and give it to somebody, and they might kind of like it, but they may not like it well enough that they'd want to put it out for people to see. But a little box like this, they could put it up on a shelf somewhere where you can kind of see it. And it's still on display, but, you know, so I always figure if I make something small, it's more likely to be displayed. Okay, so anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with a blank. So here's a piece of maple that I have. I like the blank to be a little bit longer than the box, so this is going to be the size of the box. I make it like 1 inch, 2 inches longer. Let's see. So first thing I want to do is mark the center, and I had a pencil somewhere. Got one here too. Okay. So there's a lot of ways of doing it. I'm just going to do it the way that Elie Becerra showed me, and that is you just fix a distance, and you mark on all 4 sides. And can you see that? Well, I can hold it like this. I don't know. Can you see that? So you can see a little tic-tac-toe thing there, and so the center would be right in the center of that, so it's easy to find the center. So I'll do that on both sides. So there's the center. I'll punch a little hole there. And it doesn't have to be exact, but just approximately right. And then I want to put it on centers, and I thought I had that in there. Here it is. Oops. So what I'm going to do is get it round, put a tenon on both ends, and then then I'll cut it in 2. One will be the top, one will be the bottom. So let me go ahead and get it round. And I'll use a spindle roughing gouge. These gouges are great for spindle work, but you never use them on bowls. You never use them when the grain's running this way instead of this way. So I'll go ahead and get it round. Lift it up a little bit. I don't think Glenn trusts me. Okay, it's round. Now I'm going to put a tenon on both ends. And the way I'm going to do that, you can use a lot of different tools to do it. The tool I like to use is this one. This is a smaller version of L.E.A. Vicera's, turn this off, what's it called, beating gouge, or it's not a Bedan. It's different. If you look at the, I don't know if can you see the profile? It's curved like this, and it's a thick skew basically. That's curved here instead of straight. So that's his tool. But I like a smaller one. It works nicely as I just have a small one. I took a piece of high-speed steel and just turned, ground down to that shape. And it's nice for the tenon, because I'll just come here and cut in a little ways. There's one for that end. There's that one. Okay, now what I want to do is remount it on chuck. That has a dovetail, yeah. If you look at the tool, it's at an angle, like a skew. And so I came in pretty straight, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but that you can see it does have a dovetail. Okay, so I'll put it on centers. Sorry, I'll put it on a chuck, I should say. At this point, you kind of have to decide, okay, which way is up and which way is down. I don't think it makes a lot of difference on this one, but sometimes the grain runs in such a way that you want to decide, which do you want the top? Like if there's kind of cathedrals going this way, that's probably you want that to point up. This one is pretty straight, so I don't see much reason to go one way or the other. Okay, so it's important, of course, when you're using the chuck, that when you make your tenon, that it doesn't bottom out to this point on the chuck. You always want it to be solid against the shoulder there. That's what gives it the strength. So it should work okay. Now what I want to do is I want to cut it off approximately here. And then this will be the lid, that'll be the body. So maybe I'll put this to start with just to give it a little more support. It's off well, it's pretty close. And then it's getting slippery up here. Okay. So I'm just using a parting tool. I sharpen it like that, where it's concave on both sides. But whatever parting tool you have will work fine. Oops. And I'm just trying to part it off. I'm going to finish it with a smaller one. Well, longer but thinner, because it was starting to get kind of tight in there. Now I'll take this out, finish it. Okay, so I'll put this aside. This is what we'll use for the body in a few minutes. And now we'll start on the lid. First I want to take this down a little bit. I can feel a little vibration there. When I remounted it, it was off just a little bit, so it's going to vibrate a little bit. So I want to get it back somewhere near true. And then I want to get a good face on it. So I'll use a spindle gouge, and I'm going to just cut straight across the face. So the way I like to do it is put my hand like this, where my thumb is out here, so I can push against the tool with my thumb. So I'm just going to line it up so it's straight in. So I have my flute going straight out like this. And so I've got a pretty good cut there. Okay, now I have to start hollowing. Then you have to improvise. So Glenn asked, what do you do if you can't use your thumb for that? Maybe you could go like this.
Well, you can.
You could do it left-handed, except you're on the wrong side. But okay, so hollowing. I'm going to hollow just with the spindle gouge. You don't need any special tools to hollow for small hollows like this. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to take the flute and put it about 45 degrees toward me. So the flute will be going this direction. And I want it so that when I put it on the rest, I'm right at the center. I'm just a tad low, but not much. Okay, so I want it right at the center. What happens is if you're right at the center and you push, it works almost like a drill. Oops. Okay, let me get a little better. There we go. And I just pull it toward me. So the motion is I push it in, pull it toward me. Push it in, pull it toward me. Now I want to shape. A lot of times when I make these boxes, I'll make the top. Should I do it here? Oh. So a lot of times I'll make the top just so that this is a dome. Where are you? There we go. So this is a dome. But this time I want to leave a little hill there. And the reason I want to do that is because when I put this ebony insert in, I'm going to drill a little hole. And then on the ebony, I'm going to have a little tenon. And that way, by having this little nub, I have a little more material there and less likely to go through. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and it kind of naturally does that when you're hollowing this way anyway, so it's kind of an easy way to hollow. So, Mike, I don't know if you can get the end there, if that would help or not, but can you see anything there? Okay. So right here at the center, it's kind of coming up to a point. I'm just going to leave it like that and just kind of go down the slope and then come back out like that. That's a pretty good cut, actually. That's not bad. I'll just leave it right there for now. So that's the way I'm going to have the inside. That's the way the inside's going to look. But I need to make a little recess here, a little shoulder, so that I have a place for the lid to fit. Okay, so what I'm going to do for that is I'll use a square scraper. It's this tool. Square. The profile looks like that. And this edge here I've sharpened. Okay, and I'll show you why in a second. Now what I want to do is come in here and go straight in. But if I just do it where the tool rest is now, if you think about it, the circle's coming like this, you're going in with something square. The bottom of this is going to be hitting the wood. So what I'm going to have to do is raise this above the center. That way where I'm cutting, it's coming in like this, so that way there's a place for this inside the box. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to hold it level, which I think it's pretty close, and parallel with the axis of the lathe, which is about there. Does that look level? Up a little more? Okay. See, at home nobody tells me that. Okay, so there I've made it. Now what I'm going to do is, when I get in here, I'll just pull a little bit toward me, And these shavings came from this edge. Okay, that way I get a nice edge there for the box to get a good fit. And that is the lid, the inside of the lid. So at this point, if I were doing it for real, I would go ahead and sand, and I use friction polish, but of course you can use whatever you want. I put friction polish on the inside. Now when I sand, I don't sand this insert that I just made. And the reason is if you sand that, it'll go a little bit off around. So it's better not to sand that. Just leave it as it is. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to start the shape of the box. So I'm going to make one like this, more or less. So here's the lid sitting here like that. So I want to put a bead here, and a bead there, and then I'll start cutting in that way. Okay. These are small beads, so I'll use this tool. This is a Scoochie gouge. Works well. Any spindle gouge would work. Sometimes I like to use a detail gouge, like this one. Here's a small detail gouge. This is a Thompson detail gouge. I use these two tools pretty much interchangeably. So I want to put a bead on the end here. So I start with it in this position where it doesn't really have a flute, but there's a flat on top where that's straight up. And then I just use that motion and ride the bevel the whole way. And on the other side, what I'll do is I'll first put a little groove in. That's where the bead will end. And that's the bead. Maybe I can clean it up just a little bit. Okay. Then what I want to do is start this profile along here. So notice that it comes out from the bead a little bit, and then it cuts in. So that's what I want to do, is I want to bring it in like this. And then bring this around like this. And notice that I'm not using any numbers, I'm not measuring. I'm just doing it by eye. I can probably get a little smoother cut here if I use regular spindle gouge. You could use a bowl gouge there, yeah. It'd be harder to use because, at least it would be for me. It's easier to use a spindle gouge, just easier to get in there. Now I want to make another bead right here, and that's this bead right here. So I'll just make that bead. Okay, and there's that part of the box. And now I'll just kind of, actually I can just part it off. Well, I'll cut a little bit more out and get some of this material out here. Give me a better idea where to part it then. So that's roughly the shape I'm going to have. It'll be a little bit lower than that when I'm done. But I'm going to part it off now, and I'll finish this in a little bit. So normally the inside would be finished. I wouldn't have sanded this yet. Just the outside would be just like it is. I wouldn't do anything different in the outside. I burn it a little bit, but that's okay. We'll take it out in a minute. Okay, so that's the lid. I'm going to have to work on it a little more in a minute. But the next thing we do is work on the body, main part of it, and that's what this is. So I'll put that in. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to make this true. So make sure it spins okay. I'll just take a little bit off to make sure it's not vibrating. It's pretty good. And then I want to make this face true, so I'll do it the same way as before. Maybe up just a tad. Okay, so that gives a good surface. Okay, the next thing is the tricky part. That's the thing you have to be careful about. And that is, I'm going to cut this part out right here. So I want to make sure this fits nicely with the lid. That's got to be a good tight fit now. If it's not a tight fit, we're kind of in trouble because we're going to rely on that to finish this part. So I have to get a good tight fit. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. There's other ways of doing this. I gave a demo on this once before, and Phil told me another way to do this that I've tried before. I've never had good luck, so I'm still doing it the same way, Phil. But it's a better way, I think, once you get the hang of it. I just have never had good luck with it, so I don't do it that way. So I measure that. Okay, so I measure it, but notice I'm not going to give you any numbers. It's just that distance. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll try to line it up so both points are the same distance from the diameter, or from the circumference, outside of the circle. So I kind of guess, I touch the left one, and in this case it does line up. If it doesn't quite line up, change it a little bit, make it so it does line up. Okay, so that's going to be hard to see, so I'll put a pencil mark there. Or actually I could just use, oh, here's a pencil. Okay, so now, just like I made the tenons before, I'll use Elie Vacera's beading tool, the small one. And what I'll do is I'll go to the line, but I'll try not to quite touch the line, just get to the line. Okay, and now that's about where I want it. I'm going to just take the edge off here a little bit so the lid will fit a little easier. And I'm going to see how it works. It's not enough. I'm going to have to take a little more. And this you just have to take a little bit at a time until you get it there. You don't take too much off or else there's no going back. When it starts to want to turn, that's when you know you're close. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting close. Okay, we're close now. Let's see if it's enough. There it is. Good tight fit. Now we'll adjust that later. But I want a good tight fit because I want to turn it just like that. So it has to be a tight fit. Okay, so I'm okay from the first bead to the second bead, but I've got to go from this bead on up. So I'm going to go to put my tool rest at about a 45-degree angle there so I can get this surface. And I'll use, again, I'll use the, if I can find it, here it is. I'm going to use the Scoochie gouge. And okay, so you're looking for time. What I'd like, the ideal thing would be if you look at this curve on this part and this curve here, they should match up. So if you're looking at it, it looks like they just flow in, one flows into the other. I guess I won't go that way. Okay. I'm going to go just a little bit further here. Okay. How's that look? Looks pretty good. That's the idea, at least. You might want to touch up a little more if you're doing this and making one for keeps. I'm just doing a demo here, so I'm going to take this down a little bit further. And now I'm at this point. So what I want to do is put a bead here and then hollow a little bit on top. So I'll put a bead here. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to hollow with this. I'm just going to do it the same way I did with the spindle gouge. But I'm not going to hollow very far. I just want to go in, less than 1/8 of an inch even, probably. So I'll do the same thing. I'll just push it in once I get it centered. I'll pull it out. I'll try to undercut here just a little bit. That way I should get a little better fit for the ebony piece. That's probably good enough. I can maybe... That's all right. Okay. So now I've got this cut. What I would normally do at this point is go ahead and sand it, but not finish it yet. I also drill a hole here, so that's what I'll do next. So I have a collet somewhere. Here it is. So it's going to make a 1/4 inch hole. So I have a 1/4 inch collet, and I have a bit in it. So I can just put it in here. Okay, I'm going to run it, I don't know, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 RPMs probably. That should be good. That's all I want to go. I want to go 1/8 of an inch or so. I think each turn is a 1/16 of an inch, I believe. Is that right? I know on the Powermatic it is. Yeah. So I think I went 1/8 of an inch. I went twice after I got started. Okay, so at this point I would be done with the lid. It needs a little more work there, you can see, but I don't want to spend the time fiddling with it and sanding it. So I'm done with the lid. If I can get it off. Now there's a trick to getting it off. I have this glove that it's a DeKalb seed corn glove that my brother-in-law gave me years ago, and maybe it'll work. Good idea. What's that? Yeah. Good. I'm glad I took it out then. Okay, so it did come off. We'll have to adjust that later, but once I hollow it, things will change a little bit, so it may be a good fit when we're done, but I may have to take a little more material when we fit it in the end. Okay, so I'm going to put this aside for a second. What I want to do now is do the outside. And I want it, I guess I should keep this one here. So I'm making this piece, and right now it's configured like this. So I want to put a bead here, decide what length I want, and put a bead down here. Okay. So I kind of want this bead to match that one, so I need to make it a little bit lower and make it about that size. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So take some material. That's about where I want it. Now I make a bead, just like before. Okay. I can do a little better than that, maybe. Clean it up just a little bit. Okay, so looks like that should go well with that one. And now what I want to do is I want to get the same contour. So I want to make it look. I like to make it look like these two beads are like a belt. They're pulling in, so it's a little bit comes in here, comes in there. So what I'm going to do is make the thickest part of the box somewhere around here. So I'm going to go from here. I think I'll use the spindle gouge. So I want to start about right here and go down to the right. My right, at least. Okay, let me clean this up just a tad. Okay. And then if you look at it, what I like to do is here's the high point, and I come back down so you have this kind of a shape like this. So, what's that? OG. It's kind yeah. Or as we like to say in mathematics, we have to have a point of inflection if we're going to have an OG. Okay, so there's the shape, and that's a good size. That's about the same size I have for this one. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is put a bead down here at the bottom. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so there's the box. I'm going to start parting that. I'm only going to put it in a little ways, so the parting tool in a little ways. If I can find where I put it, there it is. Just so I keep in mind exactly where the box ends. It's important to know that when you're hollowing. Okay, so now I'm going to hollow the box. So I'm going to do it just like I was hollowing the lid, except I'm going to go a little deeper. Move everything out of here so I don't knock things off. Okay, so I want to be right on center. It's pretty close. Push it in, pull it toward me. Push it in and pull it toward me. At some point, you have to start worrying about how deep you want to go, and I still have a little ways to go. But what you need to have is some kind of some method by which you can tell where you are. And what I usually use for boxes, small boxes at least, is this. I got this at Woodworker Supply several years ago, and it's really convenient for this purpose. So what you can do is just go like that. Right there's where we are. I'm only about halfway through. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to see, let's say I want to go that far, because I want to leave myself a little bit at the bottom, or else I might go through. So that's where I want to go, so now all I have to do is push that in, and I know how far I have to go. No numbers involved. Okay, so I'm not going to spend much time doing this because I can't even see what I'm doing. So I don't imagine you can see it at all. Okay, that's probably good enough for demonstration purposes. Okay, so I've got another 3/8 of an inch to go, but I'm going to stop there. Now, to get the bottom, it's a little tricky because there's usually a little nub there that's hard to get out. So what I usually do for that is I'll go in like this and just kind of find it and just keep that same, keep it tight there. So I just wiggle it back and forth, and that makes it so this point is just the same distance then. So just go in here and kind of wiggle it back and forth.
Use your square scraper to go in there.
No, I've tried that in the past. I've never had good luck. Several reasons. One is this is smaller than this, so if you want to go over a little ways, I've never had good luck doing that. So I think some people do that, but I've never had good luck doing that. Now there are other ways to hollow, but you don't. All you need is a spindle gouge. That's all you need to do this. But if you want to, you can make hollowing tools. One that looks like this. This is just drill rod with a high-speed steel bit. You drill in this way in the drill rod, and then you insert the bit, CA glue it in. The bit's square, so you have to kind of round it out, grind it round, and then stick it in and glue it. And that works well. You just go in the same way and kind of hold it. I like to hold it about 45 degrees, and you go over. When you get to the edge, you pull it to you. And it does a nice job also. Now, as far as where do you stop? I use my fingers. I just use, some people call it the digital calipers. You can feel how thick it is, and that's pretty good right there. I like that thickness. I'm not as deep as I should be, but I'm going to stop because I don't think there's any point going further. Okay, at this point, you can see it's pretty much done. I'm not going to put that on because it's tight. I have to adjust that a little bit. So what I want to do is adjust this so I get a good fit. I'll do that next. I'm going to part it off, and then you have to clean up the bottom. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing next. So I'm going to take just a tad off of that to see if I can make the fit not quite as tight, but still a tight fit. I'm just going to take a little bit of sawdust. Still pretty tight. And you decide how tight you want it. And some boxes you want to make loose. For example, if I were going to make a box for paper clips, I would probably want a fairly loose fitting one because it'd be nice if you can just, with one hand, take the lid off, the other hand, get the paper clip, and then put it back. So this is a paper clip box. Because it's not bad, but for a loose fitting lid, it's perfect. So I'm not going to. So what do you do when that happens? What do you do when a lid fits like that? It's just too loose. Well, I'll tell you 3 things you can do. One thing you can do is put a little water on it. So let me just do that. Now, and that'll raise the grain. I've seen people use saliva, but I thought that was kind of crude. So, and sometimes that'll give you a little better. It will give you a little better fit. That's a little tighter, and that's not a bad fit. But the problem is once it dries and you take the lid on and off a few times, it'll go back to loose fit eventually. But you can do that when you're trying to finish off the top. Remember, I had to put it on there, and it had to be a tight fit so I could cut. So that does help sometimes. Another thing you can do, but you have to do a little different order. If you're worried about that, I don't worry about it much anymore because I can usually get a pretty good fit, is instead of doing the contour out here, hollow it out, get this fit first before you do this. And then what happens is, if you get it too much, you can cut that off and do the next one. And you're just going to move the whole box in a little ways. And if it doesn't work that time, do it again. If it doesn't work then, just do it again. And nobody'd ever know. I mean, for example, here's one. I mean, nobody'd ever know that, that I had to do it. Yeah, I was going to. But anyway, that's two things you can do. Another thing you can do is you can just take it off the chuck, throw it away, and start over again. I've done that before too. Okay, but anyway, we're at that point, so it's not a bad fit. Next, I want to part this off. So, move it over a little. No, at this point I would sand it, but I don't apply finish. What I usually do, that's how I finished this one, was just use the Buell buffing system. I don't put anything on it. But if you do want to, if you're going to finish it some other way, on the lathe somehow, this would be the time to finish here. That's right. Okay, so I'm going to part it off. Let me say a little bit about parting here. I'm almost have it off. Always on the other times when I parted it, I just parted completely with this. I just went through and did it. But there is a problem with that. Sometimes you'll pull the grain, and so you'll get, get fibers pulling out. And normally what I would do is stop here and saw it off, because then you don't get the fibers pulling out for this part. And the reason is because I don't want the fibers, I don't want a bad mark on the bottom. For here, it didn't matter. I was taking all that material out anyway. So when I parted there, I didn't care if it pulled some fibers. I was going to remove it anyway. But I didn't bring my saw, so I'm just going to go ahead and part it off and not worry about it. Should be all right. Okay, so now we have to reverse it. So I want to put it in the lathe this way, so I can work on this side. A lot of ways of doing it. One way to do it is to make a cavity in here where this just fits in tight. It's not hard to do. You just do it the way we hollowed before. I'd start hollowing, then I'd use this tool to come in and work a little bit out, see if it fits, work a little more until I get a good tight fit. I may do that later. I probably will have time. But let me show you another way to do it that is a little bit simpler. I'll show you two other ways. Another way to do it is this. You get a sanding pad and mount it in the lathe somehow. I just have a little chuck here that I use, or you could use I don't know, a drill, what are they called? Chuck, drill chuck. But just something so that you can put it on the lathe. And you do this. Okay, it makes a lot of dust and it's slow, but you can do it. And it works well. I've done it before. And if you do it like this, where you're sanding kind of toward the center, you can still make it so it's cupped. I'm not going to do that, but that's a reasonable way to do it. It works reasonably well. And then you just go through the grits that you want. Another way to do it, and this is the way I usually do it, is I made these rings. These are just plastic. And probably I'll want to use the small one. Now I want to mount it like this, so I'll put it like this. Okay, it just snaps on like that. Okay, and the reason I did that, I don't know why I took the chuck off. Well, I do, because I wanted to. But anyway, I'm going to have to put the chuck back on now. And that will fit in the chuck. These are just, I think it's nylon, but it's plastic. I have a plastic sheet, and I just used a bandsaw and cut approximately around, put on the lathe, turned it. And if you look at the contour of it, I want it so that it's dovetail. Can you see that? That it's kind of an angle there? Should we do it this way, Mike? Can you see it that way? Can you see that it's kind of an angle here? And on the inside, I made it parallel. That way, it'll clip on and goes nice with this contour. So anytime I have a box with contour or anything like that, this should work well. You can make these with other contours or whatever, but this protects the wood when you're chucking it. If you just put it in the chuck without the plastic, you'd have marks in it. Okay. Oh, I forgot to say, I wanted to mention this too. I didn't talk about sanding on the inside. So how do you sand it on the inside when it was mounted back here? What I used to do is I get sandpaper and I just kind of stick it in there with my finger, and I'd always burn my fingers and tear skin off, but you know, I figured it was worth it. But I found another way to do it. And if you remember, if you read the newsletter, what John wrote for my name was, he didn't write Neal Brand, he wrote Dr. Neal Brand. Since he wrote Dr. Neal Brand, I thought I should use a tool that doctors use. Yeah, it's just a clamp. Is that right? It's
Kelly.
what is it?
A Kelly clamp.
It's a Kelly clamp. Okay, so anyway, what I do is when I'm sanding inside, I get just a little rag, I roll it up, and I get the sandpaper. I meant to do this when it was in there, but I forgot. Roll it up, take the clamp, and just kind of go like that. Clamp it. And then you can just go in here, and it gets the side very nicely. And this crushes a little bit, and it gets the bottom nicely. And you can do it pretty fast. You can get these, if you have a friend that's a doctor, you might be able to get one free. But if you don't, then they're at Craft Supply. And there's some catalogs back there. That's where I found this one. Harbor Freight has these, and I bought them at Craft Supply. So you can get them at Harbor Freight too, apparently. Anyway, it's a good way to sand them. All right, so now I have this. Now I'm going to use this as to keep it straight. So this face will be against the chuck. It's not the way you normally. Let's see. I think I put it on backwards. Let's put it on backwards. Do it this way. Yeah, because that way the dovetail's right. So I'm going to put this in here. I want that face to be against the jaws. It just barely does it. And notice these jaws aren't touching the wood. Now, if you have a different contour in your box, when you put this in, it may be the jaws will touch the wood. So what do you do then? Well, what I did, when I've done this before, is I pull it out a little ways, and I get these magnets. There might be one on the, I don't see it. These little rare earth magnets. Put one on each one of these, and then that will hold it out uniformly. And so then you're more near the edge here, and you won't cut into the wood. But I don't need to do that here. At least I hope I don't. Pin jaws. No, I haven't for this. They might work. I don't know. Okay, that should be good. It's good, solid. Not real true. Let me just loosen it and tighten it again. It might true up a little bit. Okay, it's not true, but we're going to cut it anyway. It's kind of hard. Usually I get it better than that. I'm not sure why it's not better. But you get the idea anyway. So I'll use the spindle gouge, and I'll just make a cut like this. And if you're nervous about it coming off, if you're afraid you don't have a good enough connection there, then you can use like a cone life center and put it up here, and then you can cut right up to almost the center, and then you can do that last center just before you part it off, or just before you take it off. So anyway, you just and then you sand, and if you're going to finish it on the lathe, you finish it now. And you can see, if you probably can't see it, but I can. It's not quite uniform. If you sand that a little bit, you'd never notice. It'll be fine. It'd be fine. Okay, almost done with the box now. If you look at it, it looks just like this one, right? Except for one thing. I forgot to put the button on top. So I have a piece of ebony here, and I've already chucked it in, and I'm going to make a little button to put on top.
What brand of chuck is that?
It's a Nova. It's the second one. It's not the Supernova. It's, I don't remember what the other one's called, the one below that.
Got a new quick release system of chucks coming out in November. Nova does.
Nova does? So
Quick release.
it's like the easy one that came out
Yeah,
recently?
kinda like- and the nice thing, the new jaws are all about a good, quarter-inch thick, not those thin
ones?
we've had in the past. So.
Okay, so I'm going to first true that up a little bit, I guess. So I'm just going to go across the face. I'm going to use my thumb. All right, and then I put my calipers somewhere. Here they are. So what I have to do is go back to the box and get this distance, and I'm not going to give you a number or a formula. So that's the distance I want. Then I'll mark it here. It's kind of hard to see the ebony. Okay. And I'll make it that diameter first, so a little bit, just a tad bigger than that diameter to start with. Here it is. It's right in front of me. Let's see if I've got the right mark here. Yeah, just a little more. Okay. I think that's nice about putting a little piece of ebony like this on a box is ebony's expensive. So if you made the whole box out of ebony, this would probably cost, I don't know, $5 or something for the material, for the wood. Whereas with maple, it's 50 cents, $1 or something. But if you put a little bit of ebony in, it kind of sets it off, and you're still using a nice, expensive wood. Okay, let me see if I'm there. Just a tad more. Okay, now I want to make a little button, so move this around about that angle. And I'm going to use, well, I haven't used this tonight. I'll use the detail gouge. It works just like a scoochie gouge, so I'm going to just round it around. Okay. Now I'm going to put the tenon on it. I need the parting tool. So I need to go like this. I want to make sure I've got the right diameter before I go any further. Yeah, it's still a little big. I better finish that down a little more. I'll just use a spindle gouge and round that out a little bit on the side. Just kind of bring it like this. A little more. And this doesn't have to be too precise, but you do want it to be a little bit smaller and not bigger than what it's supposed to set in. Okay, that should be okay. Check, make sure it didn't move. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm just going to take this down to 1/4 of an inch. And I remember, now I know what I forgot. I usually do this with a wrench. I get it about there, then I have a 1/4 inch wrench, and I just go, and it gives me a 1/4 inch, but I forgot to bring the wrench. So I'm actually going to have to measure. It's a little more than 1/4, so just a little bit more will be there. And I don't care if it's not a tight fit. In fact, I don't want it too tight, so if it's a little less than 1/4, that's fine. That's a little less than 1/4. Okay, one thing I do need to do though is undercut a little bit, because when I put it in here, if the bottom of this is kind of coming down like that, then it won't be tight against around the edge, and it's the edge that's important. What's that? Okay. So I just need to undercut a little bit, and I'll use, this is a little parting tool that I made. It's nice for just getting in tight places like that. So I'll just, yeah, I should have done this a little bit earlier. I'm not going to do it. I should have done it before I took the tenon so small. When I had the tenon down, you know, a little more than 1/4 inch, it would have come off nicely, but it'll probably be all right. So all I have to do now is cut it off and insert it. So I use this little parting tool and oops. Okay, that should fit in here. And it more or less does. Unfortunately, I didn't undercut enough. If you look at it, you can I don't know if you can see it from there, but it does dome up a little bit, and so that's a little bit of a problem. To fix that, since I can't put this back on the lathe, what I would do is I would take a little material out of here. And the way I would do that probably is just, I mean, it doesn't matter what it looks like, so you can just kind of take some out. I'm just scraping some off. Anyway, you do that, stick it on and glue it, and you've got your box. Okay? Now, thank you. You're not off that easy. I was going to tell you a little bit. If you want to hear it, you don't have to do this. We don't have to do this if you don't want. I was going to talk about what happens when you go through the bottom of a box. So,
You see the chuck?
You know, so when you have this mounted, you're getting this, and all of a sudden you have a hole there. What do? That's one solution. Another solution is to make an insert. So here's a little piece that I did. I intentionally went through the bottom, believe it or not. And so it was still mounted in here. You go through the bottom. So what you can do is you can just cut some material out. And it's kind of nice in a way because now you can get to this a lot easier. So you can make that straight if you want or whatever you want because it's right there. You can just get right at it. And then you set this aside. Don't take it out of the chuck, but use a different chuck. And then you turn another piece. Contrasting color's nice. You insert it. You glue it while it's still in the chuck. And then you take it out. And then you've got a nice, in fact, it actually enhances the box because it's in their color. I could actually demonstrate that, but I think you get the idea. I've got one here set that I was going to go through, but I don't know that we want to do that. I can if you want me to, but I think you get the idea, right? Everybody sees how to do it? Okay. So now I'm going to quit. Are there any questions? Okay. Yeah.
Are there any woods that really don't make good boxes?
Not that I know of. I think most anything. The one thing you have to be careful about though is when you're putting the lid on and trying to finish it. If you have a really soft wood and you have a tight fit, a lot of times it'll crack. So you have to be really careful if it's a soft wood. If it's a hard wood, one that doesn't crack easy, then there's no problem at all. But I've used a soft wood before where I just couldn't seem to get it to go on there tight without it cracking.
Green wood.
Don't ever use green wood. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned that about green wood. Do you recognize this wood? Box elder. Now there's two problems with this box. Number one is it's a loose lid, but you turn it a little bit and it's tight. Why is it tight when you turn it? Because it's warped. The other problem is this is what it used to look like. And now it's really faded, so I'm really disappointed that. And so there's two separate problems. One is box elder tends to do that. Now